time for Boris's Best of British Bulletin. It's a monster this week because despite being in recess, the Tories have been scheming away like mad. The cheeky wee scamps. In Scottish Tory news, I'd like to begin by congratulating Douglas Ross MP for his victory in the Scottish Conservative leadership contest. Or lack thereof. Yes, Mr Ross decisively won by default, which as we all know is the sweetest kind of victory. And will no doubt look forward to another decisive default victory by putting himself on top of a regional list next year, meaning he won't face a constituency ballot and that he'll get to enter Holyrood without having any actual pesky constituents to answer to. Bravo! In a stunningly successful and amazingly ambitious first day, Mr Ross vowed to lead a party which provides scrutiny and opposition to the SNP. Yes, you heard it correctly, folks. By saying he would offer opposition, Douglas Ross has already conceded defeat at next year's Scottish election, before he has even fought it. Now, I'm not a politician, Mr Ross, but isn't the aim of standing in elections to win them? Until Mr Ross can return to Holyrood, where he has already surrendered, he will be replaced by his old boss, a gay woman, whose very civil rights and equal treatment under the law he has repeatedly voted against during his tenure at Westminster. But thankfully, that gay woman is Scottish, so her civil rights and equal treatment under the law have been protected for her by the Scottish National Party, the party they both oppose. Before moving on, it's necessary to remind you all that the dictionary definition of honour is the quality of knowing and doing what is morally right. Okay, got it? Moving on. This week, Boris Johnson gave peerages to his own brother and to the editor of The Telegraph, the newspaper which provided Johnson with his most obsequious coverage. Theresa May's husband, Philip, was knighted for political service, though an ITV investigation found a brief stint as Wimbledon Conservative Association chairman was as close as he ever got to politics. But he was named in the Panama Papers, which is credentials enough for this government. But he is more political than Ian Botham, who, whilst being anti-immigration, bafflingly lives in Spain and now has the power to influence our laws. And also new peer Claire Fox, who backed IRA bombings, never apologised and is now able to influence terrorism laws for the rest of her life. How reassuring. Also arise Lord Alexander Lebedev, son of a KGB spy, and the man who threw an anything goes party for Boris Johnson, which previous Tory cabinet ministers said made Johnson a security threat and open to compromise. Almost too predictably, he went on to become the fucking Prime Minister. Half of the new lords were leading campaigners for Brexit, and as such were viscerally opposed to unelected power and sprawling bureaucracy. They are, of course, now delighted to flex their new unelected powers in a different, sprawling bureaucracy. And in an already spiffing week for democracy, the government set up a council to investigate ways to prevent courts from ruling any government action is unlawful, even if it is literally unlawful. And now, statistics news. The Office for Statistics Regulation said the PM repeatedly used poverty statistics selectively, inaccurately, and ultimately misleadingly. And then the Office for National Statistics revealed the UK had the worst excess death rate in Europe. So, of course, it goes without saying that Boris Johnson hailed Britain's massive success on COVID-19. Meanwhile, we all wondered how things could possibly get any worse. Well, it has been a while since we heard from Ian Duncan Smith. Good old IDS. 2 weeks after the cost of his baby, Universal Credit, rose by £1.4 billion, the Lords found it was not fit for purpose and needed £8 billion more. The crossbench Lords Committee found Universal Credit has led to an unprecedented number of people relying on food banks. No shit, Sherlock. The canny Dominic Raab saw this as a photo opportunity and posed smiling at a food bank, the very existence of which ironically illustrates the massive failure of his party and his government. In October 2019, IDS voted to accelerate the passage of the EU withdrawal agreement, specifically so it wouldn't have to face parliamentary scrutiny. In March 2020, IDS voted for the EU withdrawal agreement. This week, IDS finally got round to actually reading the EU withdrawal agreement. He saw it would cost us £160 billion and demanded it be renegotiated. He said the details were buried away, unnoticed by some, which is kind of why we needed the time to properly scrutinise him in the first place. Thanks, Sir Ian. Yes, IDS has cost the country £170 billion this week, and in return we got a future that is demonstrably worse. And now, COVID. A study found that Dominic Cummings' Durham adventure was a key factor in the breakdown of a sense of national unity that cost lives. A cross-party group of MPs said the failure to close airports in March was inexplicable and a serious mistake that led to thousands of deaths, and ever so slightly worryingly, they could not identify anybody in government who was making decisions. The government's top coronavirus expert, who attempted to persuade the government to lock down, revealed he's never actually met Boris Johnson, our Prime Minister, who said he was taking personal responsibility for lockdown and COVID policy. Dido Harding, head of the COVID app, said, "I absolutely don't accept that this is a failure. It's the opposite." But in reality, it's cost £13 million and was abandoned because it didn't work, which is £12.3 million more than the fully functioning Irish application. She also leads Test and Trace, thankfully. A report found contact tracers making only a handful of calls every month, and they occupy their time with barbecues and quizzes. In one of the English COVID hotspots, the central government Test and Trace team only contacted 50% of those at risk. So the local council set up their own operation. In 2 weeks, they've traced 98% of all contacts. The government announced a lockdown for Britain's second largest city region. Not in an official government announcement, but via a tweet at 10 o'clock at night, 2 hours before it began. Directors of public health were not informed before the lockdown, and no procedures were in place for implementing it. The PR firm responsible for creating a false Labour manifesto website and renaming the Tory Twitter feed Fact Check UK and then tweeting falsehoods was granted a £3 million COVID-19 communications contract. There was predictably no tender process. A report found that only 45% of adults even have a broad understanding of the lockdown rules, which is hardly surprising when the PR firm's major experience is fake news. Polling shows a drop in Tory support of 60% by expats and pointed to implications of a hard Brexit as the primary reason. In 2019, the government promised a transparent and independent appointment strategy for top Whitehall jobs. This year, 44% of those appointed to top Whitehall jobs are close personal friends of Michael Gove, which might just be one of those accidentally incredible coincidental coincidences that seem to be happening a lot. In more Michael Gove news, the Northern Irish politician John Hume died, and Gove praised his integrity and wisdom in helping to create the Good Friday Agreement. But at the time, Mr. Gove wrote a 58-page pamphlet opposing the Good Friday Agreement and said those involved in it were akin to appeasing the Nazis. The effortlessly brilliant Liam Fox appears to be a major cause of Russian hacking of British politics, after it was found that he was highly likely to have used unsecured personal email for classified government business and got 451 pages of it nicked. The government announced it would employ an official PM spokesperson at a cost of £100,000, even though Whitehall rules about civil servants explicitly forbid it, and the rules explicitly say the Prime Minister must answer questions personally. Boris Johnson said of Black Lives Matter, "I hear you and I understand." And then this week, the government he leads refused to even begin a review into the possibility of introducing more Black, Asian and ethnic minority history into schools. And finally, a Conservative MP and ex-minister was arrested and charged with the rape of one of his staff. Yes, that's right. Whilst rebellion against the party leadership previously got Philip Hammond, David Gauke and Rory Stewart constructively dismissed from the party and the government, And only 2 weeks ago, ensuring one of your less than bright colleagues didn't land a Plum Committee chairmanship cost Dr. Julian Lewis the Tory whip. But being accused of rape got this ex-minister the temporary protection of Jacob Rees-Mogg, a conveniently timed arrest to coincide with the parliamentary recess, the protection of anonymity, and crucially, he hasn't had the Tory whip removed. Yes, that's right. Challenging party policy or ensuring the dimmest of your colleagues doesn't get a plum job chairing a committee gets you kicked to the curb. But being accused of rape, the most heinous of crimes, gets you, that's right, fuck all. That must be some of those good manners and common sense that Michael Gove was talking about. You know, folks, if this wasn't reality, I don't even think I'd have the imagination to make it all up. That's right, folks. If you vote for a clown, you really shouldn't be surprised when you get a circus. And they're supposed to be on holiday too. Jesus wept. Folks, if you know a unionist, share this video with them. Please comment on the Facebook post. Keep it civil and impersonal at all times. I welcome dissenting comment, so unionists are welcome here. Please make them feel it. Davey PhD.